Plumbers hear me in the room. Oh, engineers too. There you go. Well, good evening everybody. And Mike, thanks so much. Thanks for your initiative in hauling me in. I just want to be so loud that you'll put in a hearing claim at Veterans Affairs after I finish this little pitch here. But no, Mike, thanks very much. Mike reached out to me in June to be here, and I'm just absolutely thrilled. Mike is an extraordinary leader. Watched him in the Canadian Armed Forces, now in all kinds of pursuits. Gives from his heart. Let's give Mike a big round of applause. And I do want to thank the president of the RCMI, Mike Cleary. Thanks so much, Mike, for having us in this extraordinary facility. I walk in here and chills up my spine, remembering great warriors like Peter Hunter, like General George Bell, who've gone before, introduced me to this place. And again, this is a spot where all Canadians should be very proud of the history of the Canadian Armed Forces. Mike, great job as president. I understand you're giving up the mantle in about a month's time. Thank you again for your leadership of this institution. A special thanks to all the Masons out there. Your leadership in our communities, your generosity, extraordinary. You are rightfully proud of that cross of sacrifice up there. And again, I get emotional in this regard, but thank you so much for giving back to Canada. God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, the Last Post Fund is really the final support benefit that the government can provide a veteran when they don't have the means to support their own burial. It's indeed reassuring to know that no veteran should be without respect and dignity, the proper end of life burial. Tonight I just want to talk about three little areas here. First is my experience with veterans benefits. The second is where the Last Post Fund fits. And finally, what you can do to support our veterans. But first of all, I'm kind of surprised that I'm still doing this stuff. I'm supposed to be retired. How many in this room have retired? How many in this room? Hands up, hands up. Okay. For everybody else who hasn't retired yet, there's a little secret about retirement. They don't want to tell you this. Retirement is overrated. Retirement is overrated. What none of these retired guys are going to tell you is the moment you retire, your whole family asks you to do stuff so that they can go on holiday and they can go do other things, and you're stuck with all the jobs and you don't have an excuse to say no. So I want to paint a picture for you. I retired as Chief of Defense Staff, commanding, regular and reserve, about 100,000 folks. About 25,000 civilians, plus cadets, plus rangers, you name it. 2 months later, in Ottawa, February, minus 25, Saturday morning, 0700, and I'm walking 3 dogs, none of which are mine. And as I'm bending over to pick up another pile, you know what? A neighbor who I love stuck her head out the back door and said, "Oh, how the mighty have fallen." You can't make this stuff up. So I went home, woke up my sweetie, Leslie, and brought her coffee. He said, "Hey, sweetie, I gotta get busy and do some other things." And so I've now, since I've retired from Veterans Affairs, very pleased to be able to be the Honorary President of Last Post Fund. And serving in this role is really an extension of my time as your Chief of Defense Staff and as Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs. When I was still serving, I was very much focused on the well-being of my sailors, my soldiers, my air personnel, Special Forces troopers, veterans, and all of their families. I think part of this Uncle Walt thing that I've heard over the years. I think now it's Grandpa Walt, to be absolutely honest. No, but I was during that period of time. And we would sit with Armed Forces Council, that is the commanders of all the services, and we would try to figure out how we could make the lives of our soldiers and sailors and airmen and women better. And during that time, my gosh, wasn't the operational tempo high. I just think about 2009, 10, 11, when here we are in the operational combat zone in Afghanistan, the humanitarian mission in Haiti, the NATO bombing mission in Libya, supporting the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver, and all the other domestic operations, including about 3 search and rescue operations a day in this country. But we were a well-oiled operational machine. Hey, our ships sailed around the world, our Air Force supported operations around the globe, and were highly respected in their mission over Libya. And our soldiers and Special Forces troopers did a superb job wherever we sent them. And we did a lot of work to get new equipment, new kit. A whole series of them. C-17 aircraft, J-model Hercules, Chinook helicopter, M777 howitzers, Leopard tanks. We worked on all of those things so no matter where we sent our folks, they could win. And not only that, we worked hard on their personal kit. Night vision goggles, boots, helmets, load-carrying vests, and oh my God, everyone wanted designer load-carrying vests. I still remember the RSMs just ripping out whatever hair they had, trying to figure out what the soldiers wanted. You know what I'm talking about here. The Gucci load-carrying vest. But we would sit at Armed Forces Council and we try to figure out the best means to ensure that wherever we send our men and women, not only would they be successful in their mission, but they could come home safely to their families. But I got to tell you what, it was a shock to me. Christmas of 2009, January 2010, over a 3-week period, we lost 10 of our members. 5 in combat and 5 at home due to mental health injuries. And it was clear that we needed to serve our troops better when it came to their well-being, especially after their deployments. And we were doing everything possible we could to ensure their mission success downrange on deployment, but were we doing enough back here at home? So we changed a number of policies to support our wounded, our ill, and our injured. But whatever we did, it wasn't enough, because losing even one member is one too many. So later on towards my end of my tour as Chief of Defense Staff, I had a meeting with the Prime Minister. I would meet with him quarterly. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I had some offers from the private sector, but truth be told, I'd like to be the Deputy Minister of Veterans Affairs, because I am worried about how that department is taking care of my folks, and especially those who are having such a hard time." And so I was surprised a few months later when I got the call saying, "We want you to be the President of the Space Agency." I said, "Space? Space? Well, some of you might know me from years gone by, but I don't have an engineering degree. I don't have a science degree. I don't have a degree in space law. My degree says business administration. In reality, it is rugby and football." So it was a bit of surprise that I became the President of the Space Agency, and it was a shock to the staff of the Space Agency. But I tell you what, they were absolutely amazing, because they are brilliant and inspiring engineers, scientists, and operators and astronauts. And it was always amazing when they're trying to explain a new concept or what a new gizmo did. And they got so furious at me calling them gizmos. And every time I did it, I was thinking back to that TV show, you might have seen it, Big Bang Theory. And I was reliving every episode. And I was Penny. Anyway, but it was 10 years ago today that I was told, hey, you're going to go to Veterans Affairs. And I was thrilled to be able to go to Veterans Affairs and have the ability to contribute to veteran well-being. And folks, when I got to Veterans Affairs Canada, I had no idea of the situation there. No idea. The department was in crisis. And in fact, they were dealing with what I would call a perfect storm. They were attempting to support a huge number of our members who had decided to release because of the end of the Afghanistan mission. 40,000 folks served in Afghanistan, and many decided it was time to pack it up and leave the forces. Veterans Affairs was also dealing with an unprecedented number of veterans who were presenting with mental health injuries. Societally, from a societal standpoint, we were dealing with this stigma and allowing folks to come forward and saying it's safe to come forward with the mental health injuries, whether it be post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. And many of those who presented had actually been in all of those peacekeeping missions before. Rwanda, Somalia, Bosnia, Haiti, and many other missions were coming forward for the first time. In fact, we had World War II veterans, Korea War veterans, coming forward for the first time. At the same time, this huge number of folks coming forward, government had cut the budget of Veterans Affairs. And some from PEI know of which I speak. But the budget was cut by 35% and staff was cut by 40%. And all of this contributed to a perfect storm. And when I started off 10 years ago, over this next couple of weeks, I still remember the clerk of the Privy Council saying, hey, listen, there's no plan to give you guys more money. There's no plan. I said, whoa, this is going to be exciting. However, looking back over that time, well, I had over 7 years at Veterans Affairs. The government actually gave veterans over $11 billion in new funding for new programs. I didn't know that in 2014. So my approach, my concept of ops was to try to change the culture of the department, to better serve our veterans and their families. And what I was able to apply here was a new departmental culture. Focus on 3 words: care, compassion, respect. Every veteran would be treated with care. Employees were to apply and support veterans like they would care for their own family. Their own mom, dad, their brothers, sisters, or close friends. Sincere and genuine care. Second, they would default in their decision making with compassion. You know, our regulations are so binary. It's either yes or no. It's black or white. And yet, from a human dimension, all of our issues are in the gray zone. And allowing these employees to default to compassion, to use empathy, and know that they were not going to get fired. And to get the ministers to say, we support the notion of compassion, was absolutely powerful. And you know what? We're the only country in the world where it says in veteran legislation, the veteran is to be given the benefit of the doubt. Our Commonwealth partners have come to Canada, so you guys are so lucky because we don't have that at home. And the reality is compassion operationalized what it says in the legislation. And thirdly, the notion of respect. That Veterans Affairs would always respect our serving members of the armed forces, veterans, and their families, no matter the situation. You don't push back on what a veteran is saying, what a serving member or a grieving family member says. You just don't do that out of respect. And I got to tell you what, the change in culture had a huge and positive effect on the department because it unleashed a whole capacity that was there. And I remember doing town halls in Charlottetown and across the country with all these employees. And I would say to them, okay, how many of you are either serving or have served or veterans, or you have a veteran close in your family? And I got to tell you, between 75 and 90% of the hands went up in the room. So that care was so genuine. And they were supporting those veterans who were just leaving the armed forces. And I got to tell you what, I was shocked when I saw the stats that the average age of release from the armed forces was 37 years old. 37 years old. This is while I was deputy minister, 37 years old. Now, a lot of folks who are released from the armed forces have a lot of ability and a lot of potential. They have so much leadership experience, values, work ethic, and they have a plan. They have a plan. And like all of you in this room, you know, some have been successful. But there are so many who were not successful in transition after taking off the uniform. And research found that many who struggle with transition released prior to meeting the requirements for a pension. And especially if they were in the combat arms, armor, infantry, artillery, and Navy bosuns. Because their skills did not easily translate to a civilian trade. And we saw so many examples of veterans who struggled. Folks who thought the pastures would be greener on the other side of the fence and left the armed forces with a plan and a guaranteed job. And then life changed. And whether it was the loss of the camaraderie in their units, whether it was the absence of their shipmates, their battle buddies, their wingmen, the support of their chain of command, you know, the platoon officer, warrant officer, sergeants taking care of them. And oftentimes it was family breakups, the ending of relationships, or the onset of physical or mental health injuries. And whatever it was, their plans went off the rails and they became destitute. You know, folks would call into Veterans Affairs sometimes and say, I need help. And so I said, hey, I'm the deputy minister, I got to call them back. You know, when a veteran's destitute, the last two things they give up is their pickup truck and their cell phone. Their pickup truck and the cell phone. So they'd call in, I'd call them back. And I still remember one phone call, and I'll call him Corporal Bloggins. Bloggins is destitute, homeless, living on the streets of Ottawa on the east side in Vanier. He's destitute. So I called him up and I said, what's up? Like, how did you get there? He said, sir, it's like this. I'm a royal. So I'm a proud Royal Canadian Regiment soldier, served in Afghanistan, had a good tour, came home, and then the demons start setting in. Said, I didn't want my battle buddies to know I was hurting. So I didn't do any of that medical release stuff. I voluntarily released. I had a plan. I was going to go out to Fort McMurray, and drive one of those big honking trucks. And then the demons set in again. And I self-medicated. And I got fired. And I have no option. And now I'm here. And so I was thrilled that VAC with Veterans Affairs Canada, with all of their benefits, all of their programs, were able to reach out and help out Corporal Bloggins. Because there's a comprehensive network of support programs which address all of the struggles that folks have. Programs and benefits are designed to be a safety net. So whether it be Corporal Bloggins, Captain Bloggins, Colonel Bloggins, doesn't matter. But it's a safety net to support all of these folks, to allow them to get on the path of well-being, normalcy, and hopefully independence. And every veteran situation is unique. Everyone who walked into that recruiting center had a unique background. Their service experience was unique. And therefore, you've got to tailor what they require afterwards as a result. And again, these folks who fit the pattern have lost their jobs, had difficulty finding housing, they lacked family support, and they lost their identity. And we also know that when folks have this huge sense of camaraderie, that when they come away from that profession, when they end that profession, they feel as if they've lost their identity. And so I was so impressed by the Veterans Affairs case managers, veteran service agents, the social workers, psychologists, doctors and nurses. What I found is they all had a common character trait, and that was empathy. They cared. They went above and beyond the call of duty to support veterans. You know, it was amazing. I'm sitting on the train today. I just got on the train from Kingston and rolled down here. I'm sitting down, look across, and here's one of my former employees. She's now with the union. So I gotta watch what I say. No, I don't have to worry about it. I'm retired. But she starts sharing stories with me about how she and her brethren have gone above and beyond the call of duty to support these veterans. And they now have access to a whole host of programs, whether it be addiction treatment, mental health counseling, vocational rehabilitation, education and training benefits, emergency funding, respite and caregiver benefits, and many more. However, it's also amazing that there are so many veterans who don't want help. And I can recall walking the streets of Ottawa, again on a cold Sunday morning actually in February, with a group called Soldiers Helping Soldiers. And it's something that some of you know, General Stu Beer, Lieutenant General Stu Beer, he created this organization. But getting out there, they walk in the streets, not only in Ottawa, but other communities across the country. And we brought along members of the Royal Canadian Legion, Montgomery branch in downtown Ottawa. We also had case managers and veteran service agents with us. And we were looking for veterans, so we could immediately help them. And we walked the streets, and we visited the Mission, the Salvation Army, the Shepherds of Good Hope, and all the points in between. We found veterans. And some of them said, "Hey, sir, I'm ready. I'm ready to get off the streets. Let's rock and roll." And we're able to right there put them in front of a service agent, and away they went. But I can remember talking to a younger fella who was clearly having a difficult time. But he was so articulate. And from what he spoke about, who he knew and what he knew, there was little doubt in my mind that he had served as an officer in one of our proud infantry regiments and had served on a tough mission in Africa. And I remember saying to him, "Hey, we can provide you all the support. We can start right now and get you to a better place." And he said, "Hey, sir, I'm fine. I'm fine." He said, "You know, I'm pretty sick. I got a brain tumor. But I receive social services. And that's enough to pay for my room. And I get the meals here at the Shepherd's Good Hope. I got my cigarettes. And I got my marijuana." And he said, "Please, sir, please use the benefits for somebody else who needs it more." And I realized then that you can't help everybody, especially when they don't want help. We can't force veterans towards well-being. It's their choice. But what happens when they pass? What happens when they leave this earth? And how can we ensure that we are recognizing their sacrifices and their service with a dignified and respectful burial? And that's where the Last Post Fund fits in. And I'm so pleased that Veterans Affairs Canada has partnered with the Last Post Fund to ensure that any veteran who is struggling and has a low level of personal wealth will receive a dignified and respectful burial. I'm thrilled, again, that working with the network of veterans and associations, that you have so much success in supporting those veterans. And I believe the The statistic is over 160,000 veterans have received support from the Last Post Fund. I'm going to close here by saying I want to thank again the leadership of the Last Post Fund here, Mike Voigt, and everybody who's been involved and recognized, but also support from the community, Art, and all the Masons here for what you've done in support of the Last Post Fund. But I would also ask all of you who have served, all of the veterans here, to support your comrades in arms. And if you see them struggle, please reach out to them to give them assistance to get them on a better path. And you have access to this wealth of resources. I would ask you to remember, for those who served, I would ask you to remember your basic training and doing the obstacle course and coming up to that 12-foot wall that the military put there, knowing that no individual is going to make it on their own. That you had to work as a team, supporting each other to get over the wall, and no person left behind. And to reach out and ensure the same today. Thank you again for having me tonight. I appreciate what all of you are doing to support veterans and what you are doing to make Canada a stronger nation. And during this period of remembrance, we say, at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Thank you. God bless you all.
This has been another in our series of webcasts produced by the Royal Canadian Military Institute in Toronto as a public educational service. You can find news of upcoming events and links to our webcast archives at www.rcmi.org. On behalf of the RCMI, this is Eric Morse saying goodbye for now, and thank you for joining us.